In the quiet depth of the night, when sounds soften and the mind begins to drift, people often believe that death is a precise and unmistakable moment, a final breath, a final heartbeat, and then silence. For most of modern history, this idea feels certain and reliable. Yet for centuries, death was not always so clear. There were no machines to measure brain activity, no monitors to track heart rhythms, no precise tools to confirm that life had truly ended. In those earlier times, death was often assumed rather than proven, and because of this, some of the most unsettling true events in history quietly took place. Across different eras and cultures, people slipped into deep states of unconsciousness caused by illness, extreme exhaustion, trauma, fever, or shock. Their breathing became so shallow it was nearly invisible, their pulse faint or undetectable by human touch. Skin grew cold, muscles stiffened, and eyes remained unresponsive. To doctors and family members, these signs looked final. And so, again and again, people were declared dead while they were still alive. These mistakes created stories that spread slowly, not as loud legends, but as whispered warnings. Stories shared at night, by candlelight, between family members and neighbors. Stories that planted a quiet fear deep in the human mind. Not a fear of dying, but a fear of waking up after everyone believed you were gone. In the 18th and 19th centuries, this fear became widespread enough to earn a name. Taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. It was not an abstract anxiety. It was rooted in real experiences, real graves, and real people who clawed at the inside of coffins in darkness and silence. In England, during the early 19th century, a young woman fell seriously ill after several days of high fever. She became unresponsive, her breathing shallow and irregular. A local doctor examined her briefly and declared her dead. At the time, medical knowledge was limited and speed was considered important, especially when illness was involved. The body was prepared, prayers were spoken, and a coffin was sealed. That night, faint sounds were reported near the grave. At first, no one wanted to believe them. Wood can shift. Soil can settle. The mind can imagine things in the dark. But the sounds continued, weak but deliberate. When the grave was opened, the truth was revealed. The woman was alive, barely conscious, terrified, and injured from trying to escape. She survived, but the memory of that darkness never left her. For the rest of her life, sleep itself felt dangerous, dissimilar to the stillness of death. Cases like this did not stay isolated. They spread quietly through towns and across borders. Families began to delay burials when possible. Some requested special coffins fitted with bells. Connected to the hands of the deceased, ropes leading above ground, or air tubes reaching the surface. Graveyards hired watchmen whose only task was to listen during the night, not for thieves, but for bells. In Germany, a man collapsed suddenly while working and was pronounced dead after a brief examination. His family gathered for the funeral, standing close as the coffin was lowered. During the ceremony, witnesses noticed movement. At first, disbelief froze the crowd. When the coffin was opened, the man was found alive but gasping for air. The shock and lack of oxygen had caused severe damage. He did not survive long after, and his death was later officially recorded as premature burial. A rare admission, but a truthful one. In Italy, a noblewoman fell into a deep coma following a violent fever. Fear of disease led to her rapid burial. The decision was made quickly without prolonged observation. Later that night, grave workers heard screams rising from the earth. They opened the grave and found her alive, frantic and incoherent. She lived, but according to historical records, she never slept lying down again. Sleep reminded her too much of the state that had nearly ended her life. In rural parts of the United States during the 19th century, similar events occurred. Medical care was sparse, doctors were few, and burial often happened quickly due to climate and fear of illness spreading. In one small town, a mysterious disease caused people to fall into deep, death-like sleep. Several were buried before the illness ran its course. When other victims began waking up days later, panic spread. Graves were opened. In at least one case, the signs inside the coffin told a silent story of awakening in darkness. That person did not survive, but the town never forgot. These events changed behavior. People began insisting on longer waiting periods. Some requested that veins be cut or other painful tests be performed to confirm death, desperate for certainty. Others left written instructions demanding specific burial conditions. Fear reshaped rituals that had existed for centuries. Not all who returned from death met tragic ends in Spain. A woman declared dead after complications during childbirth was taken to a morgue for preparation. As attendants began their work, she opened her eyes. The sudden movement reportedly caused panic and disbelief. She asked for water. She survived and lived for many years afterward, carrying with her the memory of standing at the edge between life and death. In Russia, a man pronounced dead after collapsing at work was laid out for a traditional wake. Candles burned softly through the night as family members kept vigil. At some point, someone noticed movement in his chest, slowly, unmistakably. He was breathing, he survived. But from that moment on, he refused to attend funerals or visit cemeteries. When asked why, he simply said he had already been there once. As time passed, science began to close the gap between uncertainty and knowledge. the invention of better stethoscopes, the understanding of circulation, and later the development of heart monitors and brain activity measurements transformed how death was confirmed. Legal requirements became stricter, observation periods were enforced, mistakes became rare, but rare does not mean impossible. Even in modern times, occasional cases still emerge. People suffering from severe hypothermia, drug reactions, or rare medical conditions have been declared dead only to regain consciousness hours later in morgues or hospital rooms. These cases are uncommon, but they echo the long history behind them, reminding us that the human body can be more resilient and deceptive than we expect. These stories remain powerful not because they are dramatic, but because they are quiet. They unfold in silence, in darkness, in moments when no one is watching closely enough. They speak to an ancient uncertainty, a time when sleep and death looked dangerously similar. As you listen now, breathing slowly, resting safely, these stories belong to the past. They come from a world of candlelight, limited knowledge, and human error. Today, science watches closely. Certainty has replaced guesswork. The fear that once haunted entire generations has faded into history. Let these old stories drift away. The night is calm, your breath is steady. You are here, alive and aware, and sleep can come gently, without fear, carrying you quietly into rest.